Hey, good morning. Bob Desmond here. Okay, I'm getting back to work, and I'm on this other guitar. This is also Brazilian rosewood, as is the other one, but this has sort of the figure of a woman on the back here, which is kind of cool. Anyway, this one has a cedar top, Western red cedar, custom Desmond rosette. It's another copy of a 1929 Francisco Simplicio, the rosette that is. So the first thing I do, I've got my bindings prepared. They measure 2.5 millimeters thick. I don't know if you can see that. And they're about a little bit more than 1/4 inch. They're, let's say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5/16. And what I want these to be in the end is just over 1/4 inch. Okay? So before I route with my handy dandy Ryobi router, before I route, I use the Schneider lithium mercantile Gramil. There's a very sharp blade in here, and this is going to cut a line into both the side of the guitar. I've already done this one. And it's also going to cut a line in the back. And these are going to be sort of my target lines that I'm going to route to. Now let me show you how I do this. So it's not the same for every guitar. It really depends on the binding and the purfling, how deep I want to make, how far down I want to make the binding, how much actual material I have to use on the binding. The other bindings that I put in the other guitar were more or less identical to these, but they were higher. They were a little bit higher. So I made them a 32nd of an inch deeper when I cut. Because of the large size of the purflings, I didn't want the purfling to compete with the rosewood in size. I wanted the rosewood to win. I wanted it to be much bigger than the purfling. That's the binding part. So anyway, I've set my Gramil to just under 1/4 inch. It's like 7/32, okay? Now one side of the Gramil is flat, the other side is curved. For the first cutting, I'm going to use the flat because I'm going on a flat back, more or less flat back. I like to take some paraffin wax and just rub it on the Gramil. It helps it move smoother. Okay, so essentially I'll start and I'll make my line. The blade it's an angled bevel, and the flat side is down. The beveled side is up, if you know what I mean. Also, just like when I route, I always route from the middle of the upper bout toward the heel, and then I route from the middle of the upper bout toward the waist, and then I route from the middle of the lower bout toward the waist, and from the middle of the lower bout toward the tail, okay? And this way I don't get any tear out, all right? So I do the same with my purfling with this Gramil tool, which is essentially cutting a line into the side of the guitar right now. Now I've already done it. I did it about 10 minutes ago, but this is just for demonstration. And I'm not using 45-degree miters here, so I'm going to go right through the bottom decoration where the sides meet at the bottom. If I were doing 45-degree purflings, I would stop the Gramil perhaps ½ inch from the inlay. I would not cut through the inlay because I'm going to have to make 45 degrees, you know, a fit. I don't want to slice through them flush with this thing. So I'd do that side, then I'd flip the guitar around and do the same thing to the other side. I'll turn it around and turn the whole form around. I'll do just what I just did, okay? And what this does, it's a little bit less than what my final line is going to be. So essentially that line is going to get routed right off, but it gives me a visual index, a visual mark to tell me that I'm getting close to my mark and, you know, sort of be careful. It's kind of like putting up orange cones on the road. You know, you can get as close as the orange cones, but don't cross over them until you're ready or whatever. So they're just kind of like warning lines. I also have to put one on the top. Now after I've already cut this one and I've cut this one. After I cut them, and before I do anything else, I'll take some like 150 grit sandpaper and I just want to smooth that cut a little bit. I don't want it interfering with my next step. So I'm just lightly sanding that cut line because the blade in the Gramil will actually raise the grain a little bit right there. And I just want to bring it back down to nice and flush. Okay? So there's the dust. Clean it off here real quick. Okay. So now my side is nice and flush again. After I cut that line, it does, the cut makes the rosewood pop out just a tiny, tiny bit, microscopic, but just a little bit. So now I've got to take my Gramil and I've already got that line in, so I'm done with that. I'm going to loosen the middle part of the Gramil and I'm going to turn it around and put it in the other way. This time I want to cut like a 2 millimeter line. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put the blade back in, get out an accurate ruler, and I am interested in not past 2 millimeters. Okay, that's a little bit less than I want. I do not want to go beyond 2 millimeters here. Oops. Okay, I'm almost there. It's really just kind of by feel. Keep in mind that some people will put these lines in and then cut it out with a chisel. I don't do that. I remember Jose Romanillos used to do that. Okay, we're getting close. Every time you move it, and when you retighten the screw, it pulls it back in a little bit. Okay, this is pretty close. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little cut just to see. Yeah, okay. I'm going to make a couple of little marks. Okay, and you can't see this because the camera's not in real tight, but I am liking the line that I see. Even though it's less than 2 millimeters, it's a great starting point. So I'm going to go with it. I will take my wax, put a little right here. And this is the curved side, mainly for the waist. Okay, let me check the camera. Okay, we're at 11 minutes. And this is really just to make the boundaries for my router. Now, this is less than the actual line will be in the end. And that's fine, because a lot of what I do in the Desmond workshop is visual. I don't need an exact measurement as long as it doesn't go deeper than the depth of this cut for the actual binding. This is literally cutting a line right into the back. And I'm going to deepen it a little bit here. Now what this line also does is it keeps your wood from tearing out. Sometimes you have a weak spot in the wood or a troubled place in the wood and it wants to tear. And this line is going to stop it from tearing past what you want. So if I have any tear out here, it isn't going to go into the back beyond this line. And I'm just going to finish up this side and I'll cut the tape. I start off doing it rather lightly and I watch the line as I'm doing it. I got to keep this thing perfectly straight. I don't want to angle it. Most of my weight is on the bottom. I'm pushing in. Once again, I'm not doing 45 miters, so I'm cutting right through the back strip. And I'm going slowly because I have a lot of hours into this guitar, just like every guitar. And I don't want to screw it up right now. You get the idea. So I've got my lines now. And the next thing I will do is start to route this out. I've got to do the other side, and I'm not going to bore you with that. But I will turn the guitar around, the whole form, and I'll do the same thing here. Then I'm going to set up a little cardboard barrier to contain the dust as I'm routing most of this material out for the binding. Because the back is bowl-shaped, mainly in the lower bout and somewhat too in the upper bout. It's not flat, and it's not concave. It's convex. So when you're using the Gramil and even the router, you don't get a perfect cut all the way around. In other words, it might be a little deeper here and less deep here. And so when I get to the point of getting close, then I start to fit the binding in, this, I'm going to call it the binding, even though this is a purfling attached to it. We'll call it the binding. I'm going to fit this and feel it with my fingers, okay? So at that point, once I route it and I start to fit it, my fingertips are doing most of the work here. You know, is it deep enough? Is it too shallow? I'd never want to go too deep, but I also don't want it sticking out this way too far because I want to keep it as thick as I can. It's 2.5 now. I'd like to end up with it at least 2.3 to 2.4. So I don't want to be scraping off a lot on the outside after it's glued in, okay? So this little show and tell is really just to show how I use the Gramil. If I were like Jose Ramonillos, at this point, I would take a chisel and I would start to chisel out this channel, okay? But that's a lot of handwork, and I'm not into, I like the accuracy of the router, okay? But you can do it all by hand if you want to. Okay, that's it. Bob, gonna wrap this up, this little lesson. I will be routing in about 10 minutes, and I'll start to fit this binding. And once I get it all fit perfectly all the way around, then I have to chisel out up here where the binding is gonna set down into the guitar here, okay? This is the way Hauser does it. This is the way Manuel Velasquez does it. And since I learned from Manuel, I do it this way, especially when I have a back strip that goes all the way through and I have enough wood to make the heel cap part of the original back. It's all one piece. When I use 45-degree miters up here, I glue on a separate heel cap, okay? So the decoration will stop right where the miter goes, and then this will not be here. This will be a solid rosewood heel cap, sometimes ebony, but it won't have any decoration in it. Unless it could be a piece of mother of pearl. I've done that before, put a little crest in here, things like that, but I would not use the same lines. I would not cut a 45 in here and then have the lines continue. It doesn't make any sense. On this one, it's going to be just like Hauser and Velasquez and a lot of the Desmond guitars that I make. Okay? All right, Bob out. Hope you have a great day.